Hi, Simone. Thanks for coming in today.
Alright.
Um, so I know this is our first session, so I kind of want to get some housekeeping stuff out of the way first, and then we can kind of dive into why you're here and what's going on. So first, this is a safe space for you to share. It's confidential. Anything that you say in here does stay in here. There are a couple limits to that I want to go over briefly with you. So if you were to report an imminent danger to yourself or someone else, I would need to let someone know. If you report any form of child abuse or elder abuse, I am a mandated reporter, so that is also something that I would need to report. But we would talk about it and do it together. And then if I were to be subpoenaed by the courts for any reason, I would give them the minimal amount of information necessary and would still keep your confidentiality as best as possible. And I would also talk to you about that as well before I would send anything over. We have some other just general housekeeping paperwork things that we need to touch on today, but do you have any questions about any of the limits of confidentiality or anything about therapy before we get started?
No.
Okay. Sessions are typically 50 minutes. Right now, I have us down to meet once a week. We can up that or decrease that if we need to. We could just communicate with each other and see what fits your needs the best. Um, in terms of the rest of the paperwork, we'll get to that in a little bit, but why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I've actually been in therapy before.
Okay.
I have been dealing with some postpartum depression. I just gave birth 4 months ago to my daughter Amber.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I have a 3-year-old named Zaire. I seemed to be doing pretty well, but then my live-in boyfriend CJ got shot
Oh my
and
gosh.
in the home. And so I have been, dealing with that, um, and all of it, working so hard to get back on track and then having it be derailed to this level. It really, it's just making me feel hopeless and trapped in a situation like it's just never going to get better no matter what I do. So it's kind of why I'm here.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear about CJ. Um, is he still in the hospital?
Yeah, he is expected to make a full recovery, but it's just been a lot. It's just us. I'm pretty much home alone all the time.
Okay.
I don't have a whole lot of help, and it's not the best neighborhood, so I just feel like just hopeless about the situation.
I'm so sorry to hear that you're going through all of this and being alone in the same environment that traumatic event happened with your kids would be a very stressful thing to have to deal with. Based on a few of the things that you've mentioned to me, just about feeling kind of hopeless and um, that you're just overwhelmed with the experiences that you've recently been having, one of the paperwork items that we have to go over in a little bit is a suicide risk assessment. Would you be okay if we actually went and did that now? Just based on what you're sharing with me, I just want to make sure that we have you in the safest environment and that how you're feeling that we are meeting your needs. So this suicide risk assessment is one that we frequently give. So if you have any questions about how something is worded or need clarification, please let me know. So to start, have you ever wished you were dead or wished you could go to sleep and not wake up?
I've been feeling a lot like that lately. Just more so just wanting all the pain to stop and
Okay.
not wanting to wake up in the morning.
Would you say that that has happened in the last 24 hours?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you actually had any thoughts about killing yourself?
No, it's more just kind of passive. I wish that it would stop.
Okay. Have you in the past ever had a history of having those thoughts?
No, I mean, I guess when I was feeling really, really depressed, about a year ago, I felt that way,
Okay.
but it's really kind of just been getting worse with everything going on lately.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Have you ever done anything, started to do anything, or prepared to do anything to end your life? Okay. So based on the answers that you're giving, I don't feel that we need to reach out to a hospital immediately. I do want to continue working with you and help kind of develop a safety plan and put some things in place to help you and your emotions kind of mellow out and not be at such a heightened state where you're feeling this despair and hopelessness so continuously. I know you had mentioned that you don't live in a very safe neighborhood. Do you have friends or family around in the neighborhood that you know and trust?
My mom and my sister live close,
Okay.
but I haven't really wanted to burden them with all of this stuff.
Mhm.
We've all just kind of been focused on CJ and the children, and
Yeah.
I don't want to add to the mess. But I also CJ had bought me a gun
Okay.
that I keep in a safe, just because it is so unsafe, and there has been
Mhm.
robberies and shootings and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, first, you're never a burden to any friend or family, particularly in this type of situation, reaching out and letting someone know how you're feeling and what's going on. Um, Friends and family that love and care about you are not going to feel that you are a burden. Um, Most of them say they want to know what's going on so that they can be there to support and love you the way that you support and love your kids and love and support them. Um, so I know it's hard to wrap our heads around that, especially when we are the ones that are so frequently in control and taking care of everyone else around us, that it is okay for you to feel like you need to reach out and need help from someone else. And I know that can be very difficult for a mom who's used to doing that for everybody else around her. If you're okay, I'd like to set up a safety plan with you here today. We can continue working on it through sessions. We can adjust and change as things adjust and change for you. But this is something that I think is very helpful for people who are feeling this way to have this plan in place in advance so that if they get to a moment where they feel extremely overwhelmed by these feelings and almost like they can't shake it, at that moment in time, it's very difficult for our brain to develop this plan. So if we already have it in place, if we get to that point, it's much easier for us to just pull it up and say, okay, here's what I'm doing in this moment. I don't have to think about the next steps. They're just written out for me. Is that something that you would be comfortable with doing today and want to do today? Okay. So first talking about the gun in the home. Is this, you said it's in a safe, is this something that you have access to, a key, a code to get in? You can access the gun.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you be comfortable with giving that gun to someone, bringing it here and putting it in one of our safety lockers, just for the time being to remove that from the home, remove that accessibility from the home?
Yeah, I have a friend Jay that lives also close that I
Okay.
think he would be willing to hold on to it.
Okay. Have you shared with Jay anything that's been going on with you emotionally recently?
Not yet.
Okay. A lot of times it can be really helpful for us to let someone else in on the situation, let them know what's going on. It kind of gives us a little bit of accountability with check-ins. So maybe it's something that you could reach out to once a day, just say, hey, here's what's going on today. It can also give them an opportunity to reach out to you if they haven't heard from you in a while. Would you be comfortable sending him a text and just letting him know what's been happening so that he can be aware of the situation and be somebody that can kind of be a little bit of support if you're not able to get a hold of me or don't have a therapy session coming up?
Yeah, I can do that.
So I am not seeing signs that we would need to send you to the hospital today, but that is an option, and I like to throw it out there. If you are feeling like that would be the best place for you today, that is something that we can do. Would you be interested in going to the hospital for an evaluation?
Not today. I can't leave the kids and
Yeah, yeah, I know it can be very difficult to leave the kids if you don't have someone you can take them to. And also just being around them sometimes can increase your mood and make you feel better. So I completely understand that. It is an option that's out there for you at any point, even if you are not here with me. If the emotions just overflow for you, you can even just go into an emergency room and they can evaluate you and get you into a safe environment where they can kind of help you and support you as you would need in that moment. There's also an option for an outpatient. So in addition to our therapy here, we have another option for intensive outpatient. So it's typically 3 days a week, where you would come for maybe 3 hours a day. In place of therapy with me now, and then you could return to me after. Is that something that you would be interested in doing?
um, I'm not against like having the information,
Okay.
maybe thinking about it.
Yeah. I will definitely get all of this information to you so that you can kind of take a look at it later. If you would decide to make a change, we can always adjust. This is not something that's set in stone that we can't make changes to in any direction, depending on how you're feeling. Speaking of resources, I do have this list of mental health resources for you. So there's a suicide prevention lifeline. So you can call this phone number and actually talk to someone over the phone if you are having overwhelming feelings. There's also a text line. So you can just text this phone number and then communicate that way if calling isn't an option. If your kids are in the room and you don't want to be on the phone, or you're just not in a space to talk on the phone, you can text someone. At the bottom here is a couple of links. They have some really great resources and activities that can help you regain control of the emotion and build on positively on that. So I want to send you home with this as well. Any questions about anything that we went over, any emotion that you're feeling that you want to continue exploring?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, typically what I like to do in this situation, since you're not going to a hospital or inpatient facility today, I do want to schedule a follow-up with you tomorrow, and I would like to do that now just to have that out of the way before we move forward with the other intake information. This is really just to do a check-in and be able to make sure that if you had any questions about anything we've talked about today, you have an opportunity to talk about it and don't have to wait a week before you come in. Would you be able to and interested in coming in for an appointment tomorrow again?
Yeah, as long as I can bring my kids.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some toys in the waiting room. They'd be fine out there.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Hi, Simone. Is that what you like to go by?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Lexi. I'll be your counselor today. Have you ever had counseling before?
I have, yeah. I was in counseling about a couple months ago for postpartum depression, and also a couple years ago after my son, who's 3 now, was born, for postpartum depression.
Okay, well, some of this will probably seem like a refresher. But I do just want to remind you that this is a safe, confidential space. What you say to me will stay here. But there are some limits to that confidentiality that I'd like to discuss, if that's okay. Okay, so if I feel that you are a danger or a harm to yourself or others, then that would be an instance in which I would limit and break the confidentiality. If I was subpoenaed by court, that would be another time that I would breach the confidentiality. However, I would only share what is necessary, and I would let you know everything that would be shared in that instance. I am a mandated reporter, so if I heard anything about harming a minor or harming the elderly, then that would be an instance in which I would limit confidentiality. And then finally, I am an intern being supervised, so I will be discussing, only the things that are pertinent and helpful of your case with my supervisor. Is
Okay.
that okay?
Mhm.
Okay. So what brings you in today?
I've just been having a lot of troubles recently with, I think the depression is kind of getting worse. I was on a medication years ago, but I'm not currently taking a medication. Um, it did help before, but I don't know. I don't want to be on anything right now. Um, recently, my boyfriend CJ, we live together. He is the father of Amber, my 3 month old daughter, 4 month old daughter, and he was shot in our front yard, and I am now back at the home with my kids by myself. I'm just really struggling with being there, having my kids in that environment. I just feel so hopeless about the situation, and I'm just like tired of having to fight every day for everything. Like just trying to do my best for them, but I feel like it's falling short, and like my mood has been all over the place, and um, it's just like I'm trapped in this life, and I don't want it.
I'm so sorry to hear that. That's a lot of things to be going through and a lot of things on your shoulders.
Yeah.
That sounds absolutely exhausting.
It is, and my sleep is not great. I mean, with a baby, it never is, and I knew that, but I feel like it's worse this time because even if she is sleeping, I can't sleep. I just feel like my thoughts are racing all the time, and my brain never shuts off. That I can just like take a minute and be still, and like I want them to stop. I just want everything to just stop.
Can definitely hear your frustration of dealing with all of this and, at such a influential and pivotal time with having a new baby. Um, your pain really comes through and I'm so sorry that you're having to deal with that. I'd like to help ease the burden on that a little bit, in our workings together. So I know that you said that you're feeling depressed, very trapped, very hopeless. Because of those things, I am concerned about, just how overwhelmed you're feeling and the level of pain that you're having to deal with. No one should have to deal with that on a daily basis. And I'm really sorry to hear that that's been what's going on. Is CJ expected to recover? I know you said he's not at home.
Yeah, he is still in the hospital. He is expected to recover and come home. I don't know when, but yeah, he's doing much better now and is doing rehab, so he is expected to come home, but right now it's just me.
What a whirlwind that must all be so scary for you to deal with.
Yeah.
Well, given the things that you spoke to me about, I do think that it would be helpful just to make sure that you're not in imminent harm and that we can find some ways to help you cope with all this stuff that's going on in your life. So I do have a little suicide risk assessment here that I'd like to go through if you're comfortable with that.
Mhm.
And this will just help assess, what resources, what ways we can support you through this tough time, and make sure that you're not in any harm,
Okay.
because I don't want anything bad to happen to you and your loved ones as well. Don't want anything bad to happen to you. So have you wished that you were dead or that you could go to sleep and not wake up?
Yes.
Is, oh, sorry.
When I'm sleeping, that's like the only time that I'm thinking. So it's like opening my eyes in the morning is the worst time of the day for me because they all just like rush
So the sleeping is almost like the only time you feel that reprieve.
back.
It's understandable, when you're in constant pain to want to get away from that. I think that's a really understandable feeling to have. And I'm sorry that, things are so painful right now that that's the only time that you feel okay. How long has that been going on?
Probably like for the last 2 months.
Okay, so it's a daily thing.
Now, yeah, it didn't start out that way. It started out like just having bad days, but now it's just that every day is a bad day.
Okay, have you then felt that in the last 24 hours, you would say?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. Have you had any thoughts about killing yourself?
Yes. We have
Okay.
a gun in the home. CJ bought a gun because it's such a bad neighborhood and people get robbed, houses get broken into. I mean, he was shot in our yard. So we do have a gun for protection. Um, and on really bad days, I have thought about it.
Do you have access? Is it in a lockbox? Is it
It's in a safe, but I do have access to it. I have the code to get into it.
okay? And how often have you been feeling like that within the past 24 hours?
I haven't had that feeling in the past 24 hours. That was about a month ago.
Okay. Have you been thinking about how I know you mentioned the gun, how you might do this?
So I have thought about it, but then I think about my kids and my family and leaving them and them seeing that potentially. And like that's what stops the thought for me. And I think that's why I only had that thought once a month ago and haven't thought about it since. Um, because I want better for them and that's not leaving better for them.
Well, I think that it's really admirable that, you want the best for your kids. I see a very loving, compassionate mom. But I also want to make sure that you are getting the support that you need as well. But
Mhm.
it sounds like your kids are a big source of hope for you.
They're my life.
Have you had these thoughts and had intention of acting on them?
No,
And have you started to work out or worked out the details of how you would kill yourself and any intent on carrying out this plan?
no,
Have you done anything, started to do anything, or prepared to do anything to end your life?
no.
Okay. Well, I can definitely hear the exhaustion and the pain of dealing with this day in and day out. And I want to be able to provide, some resources as well as just sit with you in this and help you through this. You don't have to go through these feelings alone. And thank you for sharing them with me. I know that can be really hard. Um, Based on what you said today, I am concerned. I don't believe that I would need to admit you to the hospital. We do have some partial hospitalization and outpatient programs that if you were interested in, I would be happy to give you all the information on that. But I think a good thing to do right now is just to talk about a safety plan. This safety plan is helpful because, sometimes when you're feeling super duper overwhelmed or you're feeling that crisis feeling, it's hard to think of the ways in which, we could calm down or think about things to do to help that feeling in the moment.
Mhm.
So I'd like right now to talk about some ways in which we can enact that safety plan. So when you are feeling a crisis or feeling like killing yourself, you have something set in motion that some resources to go to, some coping skills.
Okay.
Is that something you'd be okay with doing?
Yeah, yeah.
So first and foremost, I know you said about the gun
Mhm.
and that you have access to it. I'd really like to remove that while you're feeling so low. So is there anybody that you have talked to about your struggle to live right now, or that you would feel comfortable talking to about this stuff?
Yeah, I have a friend that lives down the street that I could text and let him know what's going on. And I think that he'd appreciate me opening up to him.
Okay. Sometimes what we like to do just to make sure that you have that and you're not withdrawing and isolated is send a text message here to start that safety action plan. Would you be okay with doing that?
Yeah, I
Texting
can
Jay?
do that.
And would he be somebody that you would feel comfortable having hold on to the gun just for the time being? Or we also have, you could bring it in to me. We have lock boxes that we can keep it just while, you're feeling this way.
Yeah, I think he'd be okay with holding on to it for me. I think I
Okay.
could give it to him.
So obviously, I know that you talked about, having a history of depression, having postpartum, all very understandable things that could trigger feeling this overwhelm and hopelessness. And also about CJ, again, I'm so sorry to hear that. That is absolutely so much to deal with right now. Um, what are some other things that we call these risk factors. So all of those things would be risk factors. Are there any other things that you'd like to discuss that kind of trigger you more so feeling like harming yourself or killing yourself?
Not that I can think of now, like those ones are the main ones that recently have been making me feel this way.
Okay. It's just good to know the things that kind of induce you into feeling that way. So then the next part of our action plan is figuring out ways to help ground you and activities that are self-soothing. So if one of those things were to make you feel like you're in a time of crisis or feel like that, then we can do that. Is there anything that you like to do that you find soothing? Some people like music, some people like to do yoga.
I really like music.
Okay.
Music helps a lot. Um, and I've been playing it a lot just throughout the day in my house, just leaving it on so that it's not quiet.
Right. That's good. That can be one of your things that if you start feeling like you're passing that threshold, you can enjoy your music, turn that on, and we can talk about, I can show you some other grounding exercises as well to help you when you start feeling that way.
Okay.
Finally, I know that you mentioned Jay. Is there anybody else that you would like to include? Because we'll actually just write down their name and their phone number that you would feel comfortable talking about this stuff, reaching out. It can be very easy to isolate and withdraw when we're feeling like this. And sometimes just calling up a friend and talking to them can be a helpful thing.
My mom and my sister don't live too far away from me, but I really don't want to burden them anymore. They've already helped a lot with everything that's going on with CJ. And I know they're worried already. And if I tell them this, it's just, I don't want to worry them any more than they're already worried.
Well, first and foremost, I want you to know that you're not and ever a burden. I know as a mom, a lot of times we're used to taking things on and just figuring everything out for ourselves, but you're never a burden to your loved ones, and you're certainly not a burden to me. So if you would need anything whatsoever, you can always text me or text one of the people that you've identified that are on your safety action plan, and it's never a burden. Um, it's also helpful sometimes if I'm not able to answer immediately, then you have these people that you can reach out to, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Um, so that is our safety action plan. Is there anything else that you feel like we've missed or you'd like to add to it?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. So then one other thing I just wanted to touch base with, sometimes when we're feeling this low, some people cope with like drugs and alcohol. Have you been having any issues with that?
No.
Okay, if that would be something that happens again, completely, understandable means that people try to self-cope. I do also have some resources for that, and we can get you
Okay.
in touch with some resources. So finally, I did want to talk about, here are some resources that you can use outside of coming in and meeting with me or eliciting your safety action plan. There is a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You can call this lifeline at any time that you're feeling in crisis, and they can talk to you. We also have a text line. If you were in a situation where you wanted to text, maybe your kids were around, you wanted to be a little bit more anonymous with it, you can do the text line as well.
Okay.
There's also some really great links on here to also provide you some other resources. And down here, it also has the one for substance abuse as well.
Okay.
Um, I know, and I didn't mention this at the beginning, but typically we would meet weekly, but
Mhm.
that can be increased or decreased as needed.
Okay.
Since you are going through so much right now, I'd like to touch base tomorrow and meet again, if that would be okay with you.
Yeah, that should be fine. My kids, I drop them off at daycare, so I should be able to come after that.
Great, so we'll set up a time for tomorrow, and then I'll give you a printout copy of all these resources. I want you to know that you're not alone, you're not a burden, and I would love to help carry some of this pain with you.
Thank you.
All right, Simone, well, thank you for sharing with me, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we are back discussing our
Suicide risk assessment.
risk assessment. There we go. Thank you. And how it went. So I think that Sarah did an absolute great job. Everything flowed. She was able to go through the assessment and it didn't feel like an assessment. She was extremely thorough, but with that thoroughness, it did not come across as sterile. It came across as very empathetic, very helpful. She knew her resources. I can't say enough positive. One thing that we both talked about that she would like to incorporate is we didn't discuss the drug and alcohol history. We both know that that's very important in assessing because that can give a lot of information on where the client is in terms of their suicidality. It also is just helpful to know to have the background to be able to understand the client more and provide resources if necessary in that case.
Lexi did an awesome job with her assessment. She was able to incorporate activities into the safety plan and things that were able to mellow and calm the client. She stayed very calm during the assessment, during the session, so it was able to bring the energy level of the session down as well. And she did a really good job of paraphrasing and connecting with emotions. We actually recorded this a couple days ago and the audio did not save when we downloaded it. So this is our second time through. We discussed bringing up drug and alcohol and using that as part of our assessment, which Lexi did this time, which I thought was really important because like she said, it is beneficial to understand where the client's coming from in terms of what self-coping things that they're doing and how that could also be impacting their decision making.
One thing that we talked about in the previous video, and I still feel like I fumbled the past a little bit in this one, is that while you want the client to know that you are available in any instance that the client would want to reach out, it's also important for the client to understand that if you don't answer because say you're in a session or for whatever reason, you want to make sure that they don't have an over reliance on that while you're being supportive and there for them, that they also have other resources and, don't panic or don't take it personal if you're not able to answer immediately in that moment. So texting and kind of the boundaries of texting and availability was something that we talked about. Another thing that I personally feel that I, flubbed up a little bit is that at one point I said, if you feel like harming yourself, that's another thing that we kind of discussed in our first video is that you have to be very careful with the language that you use. You want to make sure that you're being very specific. You don't want to give kind of that leeway for the client there to be miscommunication.
Like different interpretation.
Right. I know that our text did talk about using, instead of saying like something like self-harm, saying non-suicidal versus suicidal self-directed violence. That's something that I put in my word bank to incorporate. But then when the video happened, I said harming yourself. I think it just can be naturally to try and euphemize difficult conversations. And that's something that even though it feels, maybe a little abrasive, it's very important, we know, to say killing yourself specifically.
Yeah. Kind of along those same lines, part of the reason why we chose to go with this assessment was because of the way the wording was. We felt, both of us felt, I guess, a little uncomfortable with just the directness of the other questionnaires wording, and being so blunt about it felt cold. Um, Again, that is super important to be able to ask the questions in a way that it can't be misinterpreted. And we felt that this assessment kind of met our needs and how we wanted to portray the questions to the client best.
And I think that brings up also a very good point about just the nuance and finesse of being able to get the assessment, get the information to make sure the client is not in harm's way, but also doing so in a way that's not overwhelming to the client. Our specific case study with Simone, she's coming in with a lot of trauma and a lot of crisis that is happening in the moment. So we both talked about in our previous video that it's important to make sure that you're discussing in a way that the client doesn't become overwhelmed and immediately kind of recoil, because it can be scary to think that, well, if I say this trigger word, then they're going to immediately lock me up. I won't see my kids and I'm going to be in inpatient hospitalization. So to be able to have that discussion and make it a collaboration between the client so that they understand these are the different things that are available. I am worried about you, and make it so that the client is also, a part in what happens and what transpires after, even if they are in an actual suicide crisis situation.
And I think the way the safety plan is displayed and the way that conversation happens, which I think we both did a really great job of setting that up, that the client is the one that's in control, that's choosing who they're reaching out to, that's deciding what they do with weapons that are in the home, choosing who knows about what's going on with them. I think that's really important to impact the client counselor relationship in a way that it's not just the counselor telling the client what they're doing and what they need to do. It's giving them that control and letting them make the choice for themselves.
I agree. Overall, I feel like Sarah and I did a pretty good job, pretty great job. And that this is the type of thing that will become more second nature, that we'll only get better at. I hope to make it flow a little bit better, like Sarah did, instead of feeling a little bit more assessment-ish. But overall, I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that this is something that, truthfully, going into, even in my internship and practicum, was one of the things I was most nervous about, was talking to people about suicide. It's just a very uncomfortable conversation to have for me. So I think the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, the easier it's going to get to flow. And I will say that that is kind of the experience that I've had with it. There's definitely still areas that I can improve on and make sure I'm asking some of those important questions, like talking about drug and alcohol, adding in activities for coping. Definitely areas that I can continue to improve, but it does get kind of easier over time to discuss these, and it comes out a little bit easier, I think.
I'll listen to her. She did great.
Good job.